When it comes to doing dangerous stuff for money, I kind of feel like every avenue has been explored and exploited. Bodily harm for cash is basically an American pastime at this point, and God bless it be the United States of America. But as it stands, there's a brand new sport on the rise where concussions aren't just an accident, they're an expectation. I'm of course talking about slap fighting, which has been around for a while, but up until recently has been reserved for back alley warehouses and other countries. I know that kinda sounds like a dig, but if you go and look at some of the amateur circuits, it just feels like it's missing a Live Leak logo. That is, until Dana White saw somebody's near lifeless body plunge to the ground and thought, hey, maybe we can make some money off of this. And thus, Power Slap was born. Power Slap is, I think, the most official slap fighting league that has ever existed in the United States, having main events, press conferences, undercards, and get this, 3 seasons of a reality TV show. And I watched almost all of it. So today, let's take a very quick dive into the world of Power Slap. So what exactly is Power Slap? Power Slap is an official sport, quotation marks doing some heavy lifting there, where 2 people on opposite ends of a table take turns slapping each other. Most fights are limited to just 3 slaps. If it's a championship fight, I think it's 5 slaps. And I'm sure you guessed it by now, but a lot of these matches end in knockouts. I don't know the exact statistic, but I'm just gonna say around 55%. And a lot of these knockouts are very brutal. Like, they're brutal to the point that I can't show you on YouTube. Some of these guys have like seizures, and you just see their bodies tense up. It's pretty bad. So I want to address the elephant in the room real quick. The big statement of the video, hell, it's probably in the title. Is Power Slap really the most dangerous sport in America? Believe it or not, I genuinely do think so. Sure, one can argue that like boxing and MMA leaves a lot more time for people to take damage to their brain. And obviously, we've all seen ragdoll knockouts that are so severe they'd make Master Chief go, hell yeah. But the key difference here can be summed up by the word potential. You potentially can take a lot of damage in boxing. It is up to the fighters to save themselves by being smart in their approach. In Power Slap, however, there is nothing that the competitors can do. They are going to develop brain damage, and absolutely nothing is going to stop it. Knowing that concussions are genuinely like one of the worst things that could happen to people ever, it begs the question, what kind of person is signing up to compete in such a thing? And boy, am I glad that you asked. Because for some reason, Dana White thought that the best way to generate hype for an idea like this was to make a reality TV show on TBS. And the cast of characters are exactly what you'd think they'd be. Loud and rambunctious, beer-drinking monster men that very clearly need the money. Now, making a series where a bunch of guys sit in a house together and drink in preparation for slap fighting each other has a lot of potential for being a disaster. And you're not gonna believe this. It is. There's like a guy who gets so drunk he picks a fight with everyone and then pisses his mattress. There's like a night that everyone drinks and one guy goes so crazy that they have to kick him off of the show because he was threatening to beat up like the production team. And while watching this show, like the overarching question that I had was why? In every type of medium that they could have used to breathe some hype into competitive slap fighting, I think that reality TV show is like at the bottom of the list, next to an isekai anime. Reality TV is meant for like celebrities or challenges that can take up a majority of the runtime, but in Power Slap Road to the Title, that's what it's called, like 1/4 of the episode is the actual event. And of that 1/4 of the event, they only slap like 1 to 3 times. And the rest is just like replays and then reactions and then more replays. The majority of this show's runtime is actually spent introducing the characters and giving you like a really sad backstory, which makes the show a lot more painful to watch when they get knocked out in a horrific fashion. Like, there's a guy named Mike Webster who says this.
My son, right now his development's not exactly where it needs to be honest, so it could be a life-changing opportunity for my family.
And then, I shit you not, 1 minute and 21 seconds later, he gets knocked out so bad that his body like tenses up and he has a mini seizure. To add insult to injury, this guy named Eric Spicely, who actually fought for the UFC, allegedly got offered a power slap contract. And according to him, the contract was $2,000 for showing up and $2,000 if you win. So this man with his developmentally challenged son may have ended up taking damage which can affect him through the rest of his life for $2,000. It really leaves you with a foul taste in your mouth, and this happens a lot throughout the show. This kid Jesus wants to get his single mother out of a rough neighborhood and he cries when talking about her. Then he gets knocked out pretty bad. This guy Russell wants to give his daughter a better life after some turmoil with his baby mama. And then he gets knocked out so bad that he has a seizure. And the entire time when watching the reality TV show, you're kind of wondering, who is this for? Imagine if in Roman Colosseums, right before two men were about to fight to the death, they dropped a projector down and showed a slideshow of the gladiator growing up. Now is not the time for any of that. And I'm sure you could tell, but the show did awful. It did so awful, in fact, that TBS did not renew after season 1, and the rest of the episodes now air on rumble.com, which has to be the worst platform I have ever seen in my life. One time I fell asleep watching an episode of this show, and when I woke up, it was like a podcast where some lady was saying that trans people were doing a demonic ritual at the Olympics and that the world has to prepare for a satanic event. I'm not joking. Now, I just want to say, as a fan of the UFC and other combat sports, there is an MMA equivalent of this show. Knockouts do happen in that show, but they're normally not anywhere close to the severity of power slap. There's also fights that go the distance. There's a lot of submissions that end up happening, so both guys come out scraped up but relatively healthy. And since this one is martial arts, they could spend a great amount of time talking about strategy or in the gym working on game plans. They try to do that in the power slap show, but then you watch it and it's just like the coach going, "Hey, you gotta hit him hard, all right?" And the guy going, yeah, I'm gonna hit him hard. The show is basically structured like a tournament where contestants all fight each other and the best get to compete for the title. But then it falls apart very fast. And to explain that, I gotta talk about the rules of the matches because there's a lot to unpack here. If you hit someone with the wrong part of your hand, it's considered clubbing and you lose a point. If your feet end up lifting off the ground when you slap, that's called stepping and you also lose a point. And if you flinch while taking a blow, you have to take another hit. Knockouts in this mean that a slap will put you down for 10 seconds and you couldn't recover on your feet or stabilize yourself in time. But the thing is, if you get up on your feet and manage to stand still, they give you another 30 seconds-ish to recover and do your slap. In the UFC, fighters are fortunate enough to have referees step in the second that they seem unable to defend themselves. The reason why I say that power slap knockouts are significantly more severe is because oftentimes the fighters are very clearly still not fully there, but the referee lets them take another full-blown strike when they're already concussed. Now, this may be a shocker, but I don't think you're jumping up and down excitedly running to sign up for the Power Slap League after hearing the rules. I'm not telling you them to inspire gusto, I'm telling you the rules because they make no sense and absolutely do not work. We have the normal problems that exist in all sports, like the ref is blind and he doesn't call the stuff that he's supposed to. But then we have other things like when you club somebody and it hits them like a truck. Yeah, you do end up losing a point for it, but it makes them easier to knock out in the next slap because you basically just punch them in the face. Stepping, another thing that empowers a slap, is basically a non-existent rule because some people just show up in massive cowboy boots and hide their feet. And the funniest thing of all is if a contestant fouls an opponent and knocks them out, the opponent that just developed CTE and got 9 years shaved off of their life wins? Also, if you get KO'd, I think it's illegal to compete in any combat sport for at least 30 days. So sometimes the guy who fouled and KO'd an opponent just gets to move forward in the tournament? Because why not? And it just doesn't make sense no matter how you slice it. But the craziest one is there's this knockout that happens where one character very, very clearly breaks the rules. And I gotta give you a little bit of context for this one. Basically, this guy Vern is competing to get into the final showdown for the belt. but his opponent gets looked at by doctors and isn't medically cleared to compete. They grab this random dude off the street named Amir who hasn't been competing in the entire show. He just kind of spawns in out of the blue, and he very clearly has no idea what he's gonna be up against. They match up and Vern basically one-shots Amir, and Amir falls to the ground and hits the fencing response, which basically means that it was a very bad concussion. And I strictly remember that, like, for the promotion of this show, that specific slap was probably used the most, and they even called it the greatest slap of all time. But here's the crazy part. Vern very clearly broke the rules when he threw the slap, and the referee calls it. They even show it in slow motion with Vern picking his feet up when he throws the slap. But then the referee goes, "Never mind, it's okay." So I can only assume that the owners basically begged the referee to not call a foul so that they could use the footage. Also, if they did call the foul, then that would mean Amir, the random guy they picked up off the street, would then be fighting for a world title after spawning in and getting knocked out. The show was all supposed to be a build-up for the first main event, where all of the best people go against each other and they get crowned the belts and become the first champions in the entire league. And if you think that all of these issues would subside during the weeks of build-up for the actual thing, they didn't. To add an extra layer of jankiness, Power Slap 2, their second main event, had a co-headline where the champion gets KO'd, but it was a foul, so the champion won, and they have to raise his arm, and he's like kind of celebrating, but you could tell that his brain isn't fully reconnected yet. Now, a lot of you may be wondering why this even exists. I mean, UFC fans hate it, as you could see by a lot of the comment sections on the Power Slap videos, but the reason why it's still around is because, according to Dana White, Power Slap is getting more viewership on TikTok than like the NBA, which may sound like a lie, but I don't doubt it. The reason why they're doing those numbers is because they only post insane knockouts. You know what else gets more views than the NBA on TikTok? Car accidents? I don't know, plane crashes? TikTok is not a good metric for general interest. Like, I would watch a Street Beefs knockout compilation if I knew it would only take me 10 seconds. The Power Slap Rumble streams aren't even breaking like 100k views most of the time because people only care to watch the knockouts and not the build-up, or the walkout, or the interviews, or the press conferences, which is not only a terrible sign for the future of the sport, but it also makes me feel a little bit worse for the contenders. I'm a believer in autonomy. These guys aren't babies, they're not being forced to do what they're doing, and half of me wants to say, let them get hurt, they're literally asking for it. But a lot of these people very clearly just need the money. They come from broken lives and just want to provide for their families in whatever way they can. A lot of them genuinely believe that if they could just tank the brain damage, eventually this sport's gonna be just as big as boxing and MMA, and they'll eventually be millionaires if they could just survive. But the main problem is that this isn't MMA or boxing. This isn't a sport. These people don't fight differently, have specific fighting styles or weapons, have to display high levels of IQ and style in order to squeak out victories against other trained madmen. This is like the most watered down, unrefined, basic version of violence in contact sports, which strips away not only all the aspects that make combat exciting, but also every aspect that will make anyone give a shit about the competitors in the first place. They're getting paid to basically develop CTE for TikTok clips, and they're gonna be feeling the repercussions of this for the rest of their lives. There was an anonymous survey they did where 61.2% of MMA fighters said that they're really worried about potential long-term brain damage, and that's in a sport where knockouts don't happen nearly as frequently or as bluntly. I can only imagine the kind of stress that comes with being a father trying to provide for your kids in whatever way you can, and also having the fear that you might develop a severe speech impediment over the next 2 years for $2,000. So here's where I'm gonna kind of open up the floor to you guys. Do you think that these people deserve it? Are they a victim of circumstance, or should we all just shut up and watch dudes get slapped? I personally understand that they're doing it because they're ignorant to the repercussions of what can happen. But at the same time, to basically see people trading away like years of their life for such little money is just abysmal, man. It is abysmal. Honestly, let me know in the comment section what you guys think so that I could read it during dinner. And I think that's all I gotta say. Love ya.